Check 1 2. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight for the Village Council orientation. We're really excited to have you here. We are excited to have our new council members, Mr. Don Horton, Ms. Deb Gillis, Mr. Steve Friedman, and our returning Vice Mayor, Sharon Mahoney, there in the back. Thank you all for coming. Yeah. We wanted to run this meeting as a public meeting so that everyone can find out what the information that we're giving to our new council. And we thank you for coming. You might be wondering why we're doing it so near after the election and before the first meeting of the new council on the 19th. But we thought that it would be a good idea to kind of overload everyone with information right at the front end. So give you a couple of weeks to kind of digest things and ask questions of staff so that we can help you through with whatever you need to know. So we have our plan tonight is to go through, all the department heads are going to have about 5 minutes. They're going to do a presentation, and it's 5 minutes for questions and answers. So it's going to be pretty short and sweet. Everybody, once they get through, they are going to be free to leave. When we get to Village Attorney John Quick, John has another PowerPoint presentation that's going to take roughly an hour, and he's going to go through all that really important legal stuff. And then I will be back up to talk more about what the village clerk does to support council, and we will wind things up with our village manager, Rob Cole, going over the things that he would like to go over as well. So without further ado, we can get started. Jennifer Beaubrand, our planning director, is going to come up first. Thanks.
Good evening. First of all, congratulations to all the electeds. I can't wait to work with all of you. I'm very excited for this start of this new chapter in the village. It's going to be an exciting time. So, my name is Jennifer DeBobre, and I'm the planning director for the Village of Islamorada. I manage the, I don't know if my slide is, am I supposed to do this? I'm sorry. I didn't know we were in charge. Sorry. Okay. I manage the planning department and the code enforcement department. The planning department has 9 full-time staff members. Right now that includes 2 vacancies in that department. And the code department has 3 full-time staff members. The planning department is responsible for administering the land development regulations, which is the LDRs, the Chapter 30 of the Village Code. In that process, we review and process development permits in order to administer those LDRs. We're also responsible for developing, implementing, and ensuring compliance with the village's comprehensive plan. And just a quick note on that, we are about to embark on a process to update the comprehensive plan with a consultant that we just hired, Able City East. So we're hoping to get you all involved in that shortly. That's going to kick off probably in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So that's going to get started real soon. We are also responsible for developing and implementing and ensuring compliance. Oh, I already just said that, sorry. The planning staff also acts as liaison to numerous village citizen committees, including the LPA, the local planning agency, the Workforce Affordable Housing Committee, and the Historic Preservation Committee. So we staff all 3 of those, and then any others as we might need. We also provide oversight and protection to the village's environmental regulations and resources, and we provide information and assistance to property owners and to the public. So that's sort of a basic overview of what the department does. I mean, we do lots of other things. We do carry out long-range planning projects. We've got a list of things that we've been tasked with that are still on our board that we're trying to work through. But, you know, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about planning. I don't know if this is this for questions and answers, Barney, or no? Okay. But my number is, you can call, well, you can't call me, you can call Rob at any time, and he can get questions answered to me to answer to you, and I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit about more what we do, but that's just sort of an overview of what planning and code does. So, thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you. Next up is Sheila Denoncourt.
Good evening, new council members. I'm Sheila Denoncourt, Chief Building Official and Floodplain Manager and Director of Building Services. Our primary duty of the building department is to enforce the Florida Building Code and ensure that all buildings are constructed to a reasonable level of safety, public health, and general welfare. In addition to enforcing the Florida Building Code, the department also enforces the provisions outlined in our floodplain management ordinance. Now, how do we do this? We do this by reviewing plans, issuing permits, conducting inspections, and issuing certificates of occupancy. Currently, the department runs with 10 full-time employees, including 3 contract positions that are outsourced to private provider vendors. A little bit about the budgeting process for the building department, because it's a little different than some of our other departments. So we operate as a special fund, which is very similar to an enterprise fund. The revenues received from the building permits are used exclusively to fund the department, and no funds are received through property taxes or the general fund. I guess, are we doing questions or no? Otherwise? All right, I guess that's a no. So next up is Lieutenant Sprinkle.
Congratulations. Lieutenant Sprinkle with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. I'm the station commander for the Alamorada District. Our captain is currently on leave, or she would be here. That's Captain Lisette Quintero. She's the station commander. So in your booklets, I left you with copies of what we provide to the City of Marathon, to their manager, and what I like to call it a monthly. So look it over. If you like it and you want one, we can provide that to the manager to pass along to you. We are currently fully staffed. We have 16 members, not including myself and the captain. Deputy Julian Garcia is still out on workman's comp, but he's making great progress. Each shift has 1 sergeant and 3 deputies, and that includes the 2 Marine deputies. We have 3 vessels, and we are currently in the process of purchasing a 3rd boat. Or the 4th, but 1 will go back to the village. So we're here to assist and protect and serve. Any questions? It should be in your booklet. There should be 2 of them, 2 examples, and that's examples that we provide, or that's an example that was given to the village, or the City of Marathon. Okay, who's next? Pete.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations, new council members. Pete Frezza, I'm the Environmental Resources Manager, been in the position a little over 6 years now. Some of the projects I'm working on, to summarize, I'm the project manager for the village's environmental projects. I work with the agencies and other consultants involved with those projects. One of the things that I'm leading is managing the canal restoration program for the village. We have a pretty specific list, a prioritized list of canals that we are looking to restore. There's 63 canals within the village, so we're working through that list. I think we're doing a pretty good job with that. Let's see. So we also have a pretty robust water quality monitoring program. and also a benthic monitoring program, which is run by consultants, so I'm also overseeing that work. So another one of the reasons we are doing canal restoration, other than to improve the water quality, is because it's a requirement or a task within the village's work plan within the area of critical state concern program. So it is a requirement, and we're just kind of checking off those boxes with the work program as well. Let's see. I also represent the village on the National Marine Sanctuary's Water Quality Protection Program, and also their, well, not their Sanctuary Advisory Council, but I did want to mention, the Village Council does have a seat at both the Sanctuary's Water Quality Protection Program and their Sanctuary Advisory Council. So that's if either of you, anyone is interested in one of those seats, please let me know. So I also oversee the land management of our conservation properties. The village does have a number of properties that were purchased with funding through the state's Florida Communities Trust program. And with that program are management plans. And within those management plans are obligations or requirements that we have to fulfill. So going through those obligations, trying to get projects done. A lot of those do involve capital projects. We have 2 of those going on right now. One's at the Green Turtle Hammock Nature Preserve. The other is at the Plantation Tropical Preserve. We also conduct invasive plant management on those conservation properties. So that's something else I oversee. We work with a vendor that completes our invasive plant management. If we don't control the invasives, they will be on every one of our properties. That's just the reality of today. So we try and stay on top of that. I also oversee the nearshore water regulatory issues, for example, such things as our maintaining our slow speed zones, and then also vessel exclusion zones. I think you're going to have potentially a new one of those coming up during your term or sometime relatively soon. I also complete habitat restoration projects. We have a fund. It's essentially a mitigation fund where we're restoring habitats. That fund comes from fees from development impacts and code enforcement violations. It goes into a fund. It is now called the Habitat Restoration Fund, and we are completing planting projects. Want more trees in the village. I think everyone wants that. We've had pretty good support from the council with the use of those funds, and I really hope that we can have continued support for that, because I think getting these habitat restoration projects done is important. And just to summarize, any other general environmental or conservation type issues can come my way as well too, such things as our sea turtle issues and sea turtle protection. And with that, I'll wrap up, unless there's any questions. No? Okay. All right. So Jamie is the next up. Thank you.
Congratulations again. Jamie Terry, and I have a HR assistant, Lindsay Babineau, so you guys will get to know her as well. But basically, HR serves all village employees as well as council for any needs that you have related to your payroll or taxes or whatever that might be the things that you would ask me for. Also for doing evaluations on the village manager position. You'll be involved in those. The employee life cycle is basically anything from the recruitment all the way through offboarding. So we handle everything from posting the job, getting the applicants, the candidates, and then all the way through their life cycle or their tenure with the village. Regulatory compliance, training, HR programs, drug and alcohol procedures, those kind of things we handle. We're responsible for payroll and administering the benefits. We're responsible for anything related to labor relations or employee relations. So basically anything that happens in the employee life cycle, we are responsible for. So, and I'm a resource for multiple things. Come through Rob, but you can come see me for anything you need. Any questions of HR? Yep. And I will have your new hire paperwork and stuff like that for your W-4, and your direct deposit is basically the only thing I need from you guys. So you're already in the system. Because you were here before, but you're already in the system. But I will be getting that to you through email, and then you can get it back to us, and that'll be your onboarding, basically. Any burning questions other than All right. Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to all of the new council members. We look forward to working with you. I'm Lisa Lynch, the Finance Director for the Village. I'm probably the shortest term director that's been here. I've been here 6 months now. So I'm still getting used to everything and the process of everything. We do handle quite a bit in finance, but just to summarize a few things that we do, as we just got through with the annual budget, that's a long process, and you'll be heavily involved in that. We have a couple of budget hearings that are done in like September, and we have workshops that we'll be doing in the summer, probably July or August. You'll be involved in all of that. So it is quite a long process from getting what the ad valorem, the tax rate, the millage rate. That's a lot of fun, and we'll be doing that and the budget hearings. So it's about a 3 or 4 month process as far as when you'll be involved, that kind of thing. Let's see, and then the annual financial audit, we also do that. We've kicked off that with our auditors. They're new last year, CS&L, Christopher Smith Leonard, and they are very good. They come down, and in December they're going to come down just for a meet and greet type of thing and get to meet me and everything. And then they send us requests to, perform the audit. They've already started doing that. They have a SharePoint type of server where we just upload items onto that. The audit is due 9 months after year end, so it's due by June 30th. But again, they have to start early because they have to work their schedule around, other clients that they have. They don't just do us, so we'll work with them on that. We also handle the accounts payable for the whole village. So everybody turns in their invoices to us. We get those paid on a weekly basis. We do check runs usually on Thursdays, once a week. If there are emergencies, we can accommodate those, anything special. But normally we just do it once a week. We also do wires for larger invoice amounts. Let's see, and then we also do, we're responsible for the grant administration. So Pete has his grants. We have some through fire rescue. We have some through wastewater, and FEMA, all the FEMA when there's a hurricane, we handle those type of things. So grants is a pretty big process, and we're fully involved in that from the writing of the grant. We don't do the writing of the grants. We do the administration of them, quarterly reporting and that type of things, and reimbursements. And then also we handle purchasing. Village staff will input their purchase requisitions. We turn that into a purchase order. Then we keep up with that when they turn in their invoices that go against that purchase order. We do that through our Encode system. And we also handle requests for proposals. Those are also handled in finance. That's basically the majority of the things we do, but we do different things like cashiering, taking in the receipts and the cash for the park when they have gate receipts and that type of thing. We get that on a daily basis, make deposits to the bank, that kind of thing. So it's an all-encompassing, finance, and it's only about 5 of us that handle all of that. So it's a pretty big job, but I think our staff does a great job. And that's all I have. Thank you. Sure.
How many grants do you currently administer?
That's a great question. There's a lot. Pete, do you know how many grants you have currently? 5. We don't currently have, he has 5 just in his area. How many you have? 3, 4? Can't see that far back there. So Terry for fire has 4. We also have, you have 5, okay. Well, I'm glad you guys all know that. This is great. And you have 1, Maria, and AJ has 5, you said? And then we don't have any, I don't think we currently have any ongoing hurricane, well, except for the new ones that we started. We did do some mutual aid for one of the hurricanes. Terry sent a guy out. But I think we just got the last Hurricane Irma payment just this year, so hopefully that one's done. And then, I don't know, there may be a couple of other stragglers, but I think that's about it. All right, sure.
Good evening, Council. Welcome back.
Congratulations, everybody.
My name is Ramon Navarro. I maintain the network. I'm also responsible for the cybersecurity vulnerabilities. We monitor their network. We also protect pretty much the village with cybersecurity and all the other stuff that's going around in the world. Vince?
I'm Vince Tarvis, systems engineer. I'm responsible for all the servers and computers and everything that runs the village. Ramon keeps the perimeter secure. I keep everything inside secure. I'm also responsible for the AV department that produces these meetings. And we're in the process of installing new microphones. I want to apologize. We only have one microphone tonight, but they're going to be finishing up tomorrow. So anybody that comes up here, please make sure you speak into the mic so everybody in Zoom land and everywhere else can hear you. And do you have any questions?
We also have Frank in the back. He's the
Yep.
AV.
He's the booth guy.
And we have Susan with CityView.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. I'm A.J. Engelmeyer. I'm the Director of Public Works and Wastewater here. I've been with Alamorada for just coming on 9 years. In the public works side of it, we handle all transportation, roadway maintenance outside of US 1. We do FDOT's maintenance for landscaping and the bike path area along the US 1 corridor. But we also handle stormwater, solid waste, all the parks, excluding Founders Park. So everything outside of Founders Park comes and falls on us. We handle all right-of-way permits and projects and things like that outside of it. All of our capital projects, our fleet management, building maintenance, all the other properties and conservation properties, we work with Pete on all the maintenance for those. We also act as a liaison between us and DOT, DEP, and then all the other utilities, FKA, FKEC. In Public Works, we have a staff of 18, and that handles all of our maintenance outside of Founders Parks and all the other building maintenance. Moving on to wastewater, we have a staff of 7. 2 of us from Public Works work both on Public Works and wastewater. But we do have a staff of 7, 1 operations manager and 6 techs. We handle the maintenance of the wastewater collection system and the operation. All of the wastewater effluent pumps, we just collect it, we send it to Key Largo for treatment. That includes our major parts of our system are the 6 vacuum pump stations and roughly 500 grinder pump stations at residents that we maintain. Do you have any questions?
Hello, everyone. Congratulations to the new council. I look forward to working with you. My name is Maria Bajati. I've been an employee of the Village of Islamorada for 24 years. Proud to be an employee here. Been director of Founders Park for 7. And I look at my job as being the director of fun. And that's what we try to do here. My job here is, there's a lot to it. I'm the administrative and operational responsibility of Founders Park. That's my main responsibility. I have a great team that supports me with this. This is a 40-acre park, so we provide a lot of activities and a lot of programs. My staff includes 18 full-time employees, and they are from park staff to lifeguards and maintenance. So we have quite a large staff here to support this entire park. Along with my responsibilities are budget preparation and administration. So my staff, we all work together on our budget every year, and what we do is work hard to have a strong budget to support all our programs and events and so forth, everything that we do here. Coordination and implementation of events, programs, and facilities. That's our main responsibility here. And that goes, and most of you all know all the events that we put on here. The park staff, we put on a lot of the events ourselves, everything from the trunk or treat to July 4th. It helps with the Rotary program there. We also do a egg hunt, and this Friday we are putting on Beats on the Bay, our first concert for the season. So we do a lot of special events, programs, and facility usage. So we again we do a lot for the community. Personnel management, again, that's a big part of what I do here is that we have, again, 18 full-time employees and about 10 to 15 part-time. So it takes a lot of staff to run the park, and everyone does a great job here. And also, what big responsibility is project management for our capital projects and general maintenance for the park. We currently have about 4 major capital projects that are going to be going on this season. Right now they're putting in the solar lights, so that's happening. Pool operations, we are going to be renovating our pool. That's a big project that will be coming up. Also a new playground facility, that is another, and that's a grant project. And also, we have one more. Can't think of it right now, but it'll come to me. But so we do have a lot of capital projects that happen, and so there's a lot going on, and we hope that you come out and enjoy all our events. And if you ever have any questions, my offices, and you can also go through Rob. So, any questions? Nope. Great. Next person is Lisa with the Marina. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations. I work at the Marina. I run the Marina, basically, is the nuts and bolts of it. I've been here for 18 years. I've been the head dock master at the Marina for 12. I also oversee the buoy program and, manage all the staff that we have. That's about it. Day-to-day operations of the Marina is the nuts and bolts of everything. So, short and sweet. I don't know who's next. Maria took the paper. And the one and only, Terry.
I totally had a better picture picked out that didn't have my third chin showing, but whatever. I guess Marnie's messing with me. So I'm Terry Abel, fire chief here. 25 years with the Alamorada Village of Islands and 30 years with Alamorada Fire. We're the largest department within the village. We have 42 full-time staff. We have 5 that are on call, about a dozen, maybe 15 volunteers. It kind of ebbs and flows that come and go for varying reasons. Sometimes they just want to support. Sometimes they're trying to get a job, so they want to find out if this is their niche or not. So the volunteers kind of come and go. We used to be more volunteer. It used to be all volunteer, actually, when I started. But our demographics in our community have changed, so as that changes, unfortunately, so do our responsibilities. So now we're mostly a paid department, but we do have volunteers still. So what do? I wash a lot of fire trucks, and I don't pet dogs. We don't play video games. That's what everybody thinks, and that's not accurate. So we run for fire and EMS. Obviously, we run the fire calls. We run the EMS calls, motor vehicle accidents. We still have some structure fires. Yes, most of it's made out of concrete, but stuff inside still does burn. US 1, we run a fair amount of hazmat calls out there because everything going up and down that highway that supplies this entire county, including the military bases on the end, traverses through us. EMS calls obviously is about 70% of our call volume. Public assists and stuff of that nature, helping people, welfare checks, that's another very large number. We implemented our boat program this year, which is just getting off the ground. We onboard our own academy, so when we get people, they come to us fully trained. We spend the next 4 weeks actually bringing them up to, this is how Alamrada does it, so we bring them up to our speed. And we train, and then we train, and then we train some more, because we don't run a whole lot of calls. We only run about 1,800 calls a year. So in order to maintain our proficiency, we get that through lots of training, whether it's in-house or whether we get them out of house. Fire prevention. We don't have a lot of fires. Why? Because it's made out of concrete, but also because Mark and the staff do their job. If they do their job and try to eliminate stuff that can cause issues and cause fires and prevent them from the very beginning, that's what we'd rather see anyway. So we do a lot of life safety permitting. We do a lot of safety inspections. We do site plan approvals for those horrible developers. He does about 400 different vacation rentals because they never pass the first time. We do pre-fire planning on every commercial structure within the village. And then we also up to Mark and my office as well to do interpretations when it comes to the life safety code and proper implementation of that. We do emergency management. That's planning for the hurricanes and the what-ifs and cyber attacks with our IT guys. We coordinate with that. That actually falls under emergency management as well. So whenever that training comes up, we go at it. Also, may I say, no single department head up here does it solo. We all work so well with everybody. We never tackle any project by ourselves. We always include other department heads because it takes a village, truly, for us all to function. So we never go at any of this alone. We're always bouncing off other department heads because somebody might know something more than us, so we rely on the network that we've created here. Emergency management, something that you guys will see coming at you soon after finance does my RFP, and then it comes back to the committee, and then it goes to you guys for council, is our comprehensive emergency management plan is getting revisions this year. So you'll be seeing those rewrites. We do county coordinations. Rob and I and a bunch of the staff have been for the past 4 days doing coordinations for Raphael. Even though it's way the heck out that way somewhere, we were still doing coordinating calls because the lower end of our county was seeing some effects. So we all play in the same sandbox. We do tons of incident command structure training, ICS training. We do hurricane drills. And then for those that want to get back early, we also coordinate the early reentry training so that you can come back, not be a burden to our community, help yourself, and then help your neighbor. And then all those people become force multipliers for us as a community to respond and get back to some sort of normalcy. Huge thing of what we do is community outreach. We do CPR training every month. We do babysitting courses for groups whenever they ask for it. We do stop the bleed training for groups everywhere. Our CPR also includes that. We also do that in all of our schools. We do ham radio training, so we've got backups. It doesn't need internet for ham radio to work, so we've got ham radios in our EOC. We've got people that can work it. We do fire safety week in the school. We just wrapped that up. You may have seen some of our social media blasts. We read to the kids, to the preschoolers. We want to be upfront and personal with all these guys. We do lots of outreach also with the children's shelter down on High Point Road. Want to keep them from taking the bad path. Let's show them that fire and police are not bad. We work really well with them. We do group activities with them, so that's one of my favorites. We do tons of stuff on the old road in Alamrada proper. We do the 4th of July with Maria, and we support that, the 9/11 ceremony, Monday the Veterans Ceremony, Art Under the Oaks, the Seafood Fest, gigantic nautical market, 5Ks and 10Ks. There's a 10K coming up. You guys should get out there and run it. It's over the bridge. It's a beautiful view. It's kind of weird if you stop moving, the bridge shakes. Just saying. As long as you're running, you're golden. Toys for Tots. You'll be seeing those boxes coming out real soon. This county per capita collects more toys than any other county in the country, just so you guys know. So our community is absolutely amazing. We help support that, and December 15th is the Santa Parade. We'll be collecting with the Marines for Toys for Tots then, and then that week we'll be giving them out throughout the county. Every toy raised in the county stays in this county, just so you guys know. Let's see, we go to every football game. Van, you're at most of them as well, shaking that really annoying bell, but I love the spirit, brother. We go to all the chamber events. We support Alligator Light Swim. This year we did it with our boat, and we had 2 saves. Thank you very much. Beats on the Bay with Maria. We come out, we support that. This weekend, this Friday, is a Jimmy Buffett tribute band. Y'all should come out, and they've got local talent that are opening up. Please come on out. Working agreements. We have tons of working agreements, both internally and externally. Some of our external working agreements that we have is with University of Miami, Gordon Center of Research, and the Sylvester Cancer Institute. We're more prone to cancer as a firefighter than most average jobs, so we kind of keep that one tight to us. We work with the Florida Keys College, Braxton College, Broward College, Miami-Dade College, Florida State Fire College, Florida Fire Marshal's Office, Florida Keys Health Ready Coalition, which is countywide. It's pretty awesome. If you're not familiar, Google it. It does a lot of good in coordination countywide. Kind of like we do here as a staff, they do it for anybody that has anything to do with any sort of health care throughout the county. Have agreements with American Heart Association and ASHI as well. There's a ton more I could talk. I could talk forever, all night, and I talk really fast, so I know there's a lot going at you. If you want to know anything else about my department, I highly encourage you to go to the August 21st budget workshop number 1. Starts at 6:20, ends at 6:50. It goes over a lot of what we do and a lot of stuff that we've got in the queue. Big projects that I've got coming at you guys, grants that are coming at you guys that you might see as policymakers and stuff of that nature. Yes, it's 30 minutes, but you'll learn a lot about what our department does and what we try to achieve in our community. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Do you guys have any questions? I know I talked a lot, right? Rock on, that's the last staff member, so I'm out of here. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, congratulations to all of our newly elected officials. Look forward to working with all of you. I know we've got some exciting things on the horizon that all of our department heads have touched on a little bit today. I'm John Quick. I serve as the village attorney. I'm with the law firm of Weiss Sirota Helfman. So while you see me on the dais and the public sees me on the dais at the meetings, you have access to my entire firm on whatever the needs of the village might be. So we have a number of specialists, some that you all may be interested in. We have ethics specialists. I mean, that's something that is, I would always encourage you all, if you have a question on anything Florida ethics related, it's always better to call first than to call afterwards. And you have access to that. We have specialized land use attorneys, real estate attorneys. We handled a few real estate transactions recently, some highly publicized ones that the village purchased recently. We handle basically anything that is potentially legal, comes through the village attorney's office. So we work with all departments. We work with all of the council members. The village attorney is one of your 2 charter officers. The village attorney as well as the village manager. So we are actually direct employees of the village council, whereas everyone else falls under, predominantly under the village manager's office. Obviously, anyone in my firm would fall under the village attorney's office. I do have a presentation. If you note that it says I'm getting a little more than 5 minutes. It has me as an hour. I will talk quickly, but there are a number of things I want to touch base with, just because for those of you who are new to the village and those of you who are returning, the way government works, not just in Florida, but particularly in Florida, isn't always the way that those of us coming from the private industry would normally, something we'd be used to. So I do want to make sure before you guys get sworn in that we touch on some of these things, because from day one, these are issues you are going to have to deal with. And in fact, I did reach out to all of you after your election, and there are even laws that you are subject to now, namely the Sunshine Law, that even though you haven't been sworn in yet, that's something that already applies to you. So like I said, I will go as quickly as possible, because I know I don't want to keep everybody here too long. Oh, it's not working. Okay. My presentation, I do believe, is in there. I think it's immediately after the presentation we were just looking at. In addition, there is a binder that I put together that includes a number of things. Some of them that I would encourage you to take a look at, particularly your village council procedures. Those are the procedures that the council has enacted on itself as to how you all operate. I'll go through some of those. Touches on things like the order of presentation of things, agenda deadlines, public comment. I mean, so those are things that I would encourage you to look at. There's even a seating arrangement in terms of who sits where with the mayor, the vice mayor, and whatnot. So I would encourage you to look at that. That way, if there's any changes you all may want to make, if the majority of the council approves that, that's something you could do. But those are going to be, that's going to directly impact you in your meetings. So I would encourage you to take a look at those. There's also a list of pending litigation. I try to send around quarterly updates on litigation the village is involved in. So one of the tabs is the most recent update, which did come in August. And then at the last tab, there's contact information for me and some of my partners in terms of people you might might deal with from Weiss Serota. Has our cell phone numbers on there as well as our assistants in case you need to reach out directly to them. So first and foremost, this is kind of the most basic thing, is what form of government are we? The village is a council manager form of government. There's different forms of government. There's a strong mayor form of government. The village, through its charter, has elected to be a council manager form of government. What that means is you as the council, you think of it as a corporation. You are the board of directors, your manager is your CEO. So your manager is making your day-to-day decisions, your manager is handling whatever authority is granted to him. He has purchasing authority, which we'll go over, up to just shy of $25,000. He handles the hiring, the firing, all of that stuff. You all set the policy, you make the decisions, you employ the manager, you employ the village attorney, and then you also will be involved in what we'll touch on, which are quasi-judicial items as well, which are not purely legislative decisions or discretionary. Those are going to be based upon the record and certain standards of review. Next slide. So again, just very basic. The first few things are going to be very basic. 5 members of the village. You have 2 terms. The original term limit was 8 consecutive years, as I'm sure you all are aware. Starting in the 2024 election, that term limit is going to be 8 years cumulative. It doesn't matter if it was consecutive or not. That is not yet in your charter because the election hasn't been certified yet, but once it's certified, which should be happening in the next week or so, that will become the charter. So starting with you all, the new term limit is going to be 8 cumulative years. Next slide. Again, this is, the village, as you all know, doesn't elect by, the residents do not elect the mayor. You all elect 5 council members, and you elect amongst yourselves the mayor. So what does the mayor do? The mayor presides over council meetings, effectively serves as the chair of the meetings, is the ceremonial head of the government. Mayor will execute all ordinances and resolutions, and then in the absence, obviously, the vice mayor will fill that role. And then the village, the mayor is recognized as the head of the government, so he or she can be served with process if there is litigation or any sort of subpoena. That they can always call me and we can figure that out so they don't bother you at home. That's what I always encourage. So that is the role of your mayor. Doesn't really have any additional superpowers. The mayor can also call special meetings in his or her absence. The vice mayor can, or the majority of your council members can call special meetings as well. Next slide. Now, this is what I was touching on before, the village council. You all have all of the powers. You make the decision, well, the majority of you make the decisions. There are 5 of you, so if all 5 of you are present, whatever the 3 of you, 3 who vote yes on something or vote no on something, you make the decision as the majority. There are some instances where a supermajority is required, but those are specific instances. You set the policy of the village. If you want the policy to be, acquire more hammock space, that was something we had heard at with the last council. If the majority of you want to do that, that's a directive that you can give as a policy, and you give that directive to your manager, and then your manager will effectuate whatever that policy might be. You adopt any ordinances, you adopt any resolutions. Resolutions require 1 reading, ordinances require 2 readings. Ordinances are effectively the law of the village. They go into your code, and so those ones are a little bit more difficult to change. I mean, anything can be changed as long as it doesn't violate the law, but it would require additional 2 readings. There is a exception where if your ordinance says A, and after first reading you change it to be something completely different, and instead of A it's blue, you would need to go back through and you would have to have another first reading again because you've made such a significant change at second reading. And again, as I mentioned, the village council employs 2 charter members, the village charter employees, the village manager, and the village attorney. Next slide. You also, as we saw within the last month or so, you adopt a village budget. That's something that happens annually. I won't go into all the details, but there are very specific statutory requirements for the adoption of the budget, including when it can happen, how it can happen, what the votes are. There are very specific statutory requirements. Again, those are things that we can get into if we need to during budget season. I won't touch on it now, but that is obviously a very important role that the village council plays that impacts everything for the following year. You also have jurisdiction over zoning matters, certain variances, and there are reviews of decisions rendered by building and zoning. There are administrative appeals that can be taken before you all, and the council will make determinations on those administrative appeals based upon the standards set forth in the code, as well as the evidence that's presented before you at those times, or at that time. Next slide. The council authority with regard to purchasing authority. The council has vested the manager with purchasing authority that is less than $25,000. So anything that is greater or equal to $25,000 will need to come back before the council. That also includes contracts that if you have 3 contracts with the same vendor that are $10,000 each, for that 3rd contract, it's going to need to come back before the council because it includes the accumulation of the amount spent during that calendar year. Any requests for proposals related to design build services, that's going to come before you all. Now your village manager, though, has the authority to issue rules, policies, and procedures governing the purchase of materials. And we do have a procurement policy that is in place. It obviously has to comply with the code in terms of the purchasing limits and whatnot, but we do have that, and that is something that is vested with your manager. Next slide. Well, looks like we might have not come through, but this one relates to departments, and just that your departments are responsible for your day-to-day management of contracts. Your manager will work with your department heads to resolve any contract issues. Obviously, elected officials, you all can inquire of issues related to a particular contract, matters of concern. I would stress to go through your manager. Because you do have a policy, or you do have a prohibition in the village in terms of, what's the term I'm thinking of, but basically interfering with staff. I don't think that's the exact term, but so I would encourage you to go through the manager. You can obviously reach out to me as well, and that way your manager also knows everything that might be potentially going on and issues that might come up. Next slide. Oh. I guess I must have, I didn't know I did that, so. So your limits of authority. So this, I'm going to touch on this a little bit, in a little bit more detail as well in terms of ethics laws, but one thing just to in terms of limits of authority, obviously there are prohibitions on misuse of official positions. That relates to trying to get special benefits for yourself or others, unless it's permitted by by law. So I'll touch on that a little bit more, but I did want to mention it in this section as well. Next slide. Your charter as well. This is what I was referring to before. Your charter limits the ability of council to participate or interfere with the administration of the government. That was why I recommended if you have issues or questions or you want to inquire about something, go through the manager, contact me. Obviously, you all live here. If you have an issue, if you have your own property and you're going through with a building permit, you are allowed to address things that are your own property. I know if you're going through a rezoning, those are things you can do. Because that is personal to you. That's not really looked at as interfering under the charter. So if you do have instances where if you have something that is personal to you, that would not fall under that. Would not fall under that section. Under our charter, it talks about a violation of that section as being considered malfeasance within the Florida statutes. So I just mentioned that so that you all know that there is a state statute behind that if somebody believes you have violated it. Next slide. This one relates to the council meetings. Our current schedule is Tuesday and Thursday. It's set based on the second Thursday of every month. And then, this is the lawyer and me who had written this. The immediate preceding Tuesday at 5:30. And the reason for that is sometimes the second Thursday is preceded by the first Tuesday. So in the back, I know that Marnie put in your notebook a schedule of proposed dates for council meetings, and this is based upon the current schedule of the Tuesday-Thursday setup that we are on. Council meetings are live streamed. I'm sure you all have watched them. Public has the ability to access it. Public has the ability to, and I'll get into remote attendance as well, but the public has the ability to attend remotely with the exception of participation during quasi-judicial proceedings. Your agenda, under this, again, this comes from your meeting procedures. Your agenda items will be provided to the council 6 days before the council meeting. And all of you are afforded the opportunity to have briefings, and I would encourage you to have briefings. Briefings can be, usually the way we do it is, we have the manager, myself, and whatever potential department heads are there with the agenda items. It can be as formal or as informal as you like, but I would encourage you to have those briefings because you can really dive into some of the issues that sometimes it's a little more difficult or a little more awkward to do on the dais itself. And you can ask as many questions or as few questions as you might like. So I would encourage you to do that. Next slide. This is, again, basics. You have majority of your council constitutes a quorum. So there's 5 council seats. 3 of you need to be present in order for there to be a quorum. That means physically present. In Florida, you have to have 3 physically present. So you can't have 2 physical and then a 3rd one in remote attendance to create a quorum. During the COVID, when everything was remote, that requirement was waived. But that waiver has long since expired. So you need to at least have 3 physically present for your quorum. And unless you have that, you cannot take action. It would just be considered a workshop where you can discuss because it's publicly noticed, but you can't take any action. If you want to take action, it has to be by an affirmative vote of the council, and majority would prevail. So it is based upon, again, there are some exceptions, but generally it's based upon the majority of those that are present. So if 3 are present, 2 say yes, 1 says no, that would carry the day. There are some exceptions that require either a supermajority of vote, or there are some exceptions that require a majority of the full council. So even if the full council isn't here, there's 5 of you, say only 3 of you are present. If that vote required a majority of the full council to approve it, then all 3 that were present in that example would have to unanimously agree on that. Again, your ways of taking formal action are ordinance, resolution, and motion. We do have discussion items, as I'm sure you all have seen, and those are ways that you can give guidance to staff, but in those instances, if there's guidance given, we will bring back a formal, whatever it might be, whether it's a directive to try to acquire something, we will bring back something for formal action because the council will have to formally approve of whatever that guidance was. Next slide. And I touched on this before with regard to special meetings in terms of the mayor's powers, so I won't really go over it. This is in your charter. Mayor can call it in his or her absence. The vice mayor can call it, or the majority of council can call it. So if there is a council member who wants to have a special meeting to discuss, whatever it might be, the way I would recommend you do it, reach out to Marnie in the clerk's office, say I'd like to have a special meeting on X on such and such day. Marnie can see if there are 2 other council members who would agree, or if the mayor would agree, who can call it without having to require the majority. We need 72 hours public notice for any special meeting, so just keep that in mind. Next slide, and this is going to have to do with the seating arrangements. Again, this is in your council procedure, so you all can change this, but right now this is what it is. Your mayor sits in the middle of the dais, your vice mayor sits immediately to his or her left, and then immediately to the vice mayor's left is a seat for a council member, and then immediately the 2 seats immediately to the right of the mayor are for the other 2 council members. So the only ones that are set in stone are mayor and vice mayor, and then the 3 who are not mayor, vice mayor, you all can figure it out, and if not, we can flip coins or whatnot. But so we do have that also on the dais with you. Will be Rob as the manager will be next to a council member. I'll be next to him, and then usually it's the planning director and then the clerk. Sometimes, depending on the issue, the finance director might be in place of the planning director or something along those lines. Next slide is on remote attendance. I want to make sure you all are aware of this. You do have the ability to attend remotely. It's built into a resolution by the council that was passed in 2021 or 2020, I can't remember, it was passed a few years ago, 2021. Only 1 council member on our current resolution can attend remotely. It's first come, first served basis. You submit the request in writing to the mayor. I would copy the clerk as well. And you just say, I need to attend remotely, and that's something that that can be granted. One of the requirements is you have to be plainly visible, so your camera needs to be on. And if you are the mayor, you cannot chair the meeting because you are in remote attendance. The only issue is quasi-judicial matters. You can participate under our remote policy, but you cannot vote on quasi-judicial matters if you are remote. Next slide is going to be public comment. Right now we have 3 minutes per speaker. You get 5 minutes if you're representing an association or group. The current setup is, and I know that with the last council there was some debate over public comment. It seemed to be a debate at every council meeting. So I would encourage you all to, I was going to say speak, but speak at a publicly noticed meeting about how you would like to handle public comment in terms of timing, when, in terms of, there's no, there are certain instances where comment is not required, like if we have a, like a briefing, just a manager discussion item where the manager wants to update you on a discussion he had with FDOT or Commerce. And just to give you an update, there's no real action to be taken. There's no public comment that's required for that. Doesn't mean you can't, but that's why I say I'd encourage you all to come to that determination now, so that we're not deciding it every time on the dais, how we might want to do that. And that, again, right now under your council procedures, they don't have the ability to speak during those time periods. Again, but you all can change that to however you prefer. Council meetings under the code can't go later than 10 p.m. or they have to adjourn no later than 10 p.m. unless there is a motion made by a council member to extend, and the extension is for 30-minute maximum. So, if we get to 9:55, you'll usually see Marnie kind of waving, and that's no reminder. We need a motion to extend if you want to keep moving forward. So just keep that in mind. Next slide. We touched on this. I'll go really fast again. This is just department heads, again, hired by Rob, managed, overseen by Rob, and he's the liaison with the department heads when it comes to issues that may come forward. So, if you want to speak with Rob about anything related to, any of the department heads who have come up and spoken, if you have ideas or whatnot, I recommend, speak with Rob, and then, he can get together, and then you all can work out whatever those items are. Next slide. And then this is where, if you're not, if you haven't been in government before in Florida, this is where it gets kind of frustrating, I think, for you all, which is the Sunshine Law. The Sunshine Law has been in place since 1967. It applies to elected officials and appointed boards. It applies to advisory boards who participate in the decision-making process or make recommendations. So our advisory boards are subject to the Sunshine Law as well. Next slide. And the Sunshine Law, what that means is, if you all want to talk about anything that might potentially come before you as a council, it has to be at a publicly noticed meeting. And you have to give reasonable notice. The minutes have to be taken. And if they are recorded, if there's a video or audio recording, all of that becomes public record. So if you, Councilmember A and Councilmember B, want to talk about an idea to promote local business growth or something like that, it has to be at a publicly noticed meeting. It doesn't mean that it has to be at the council meeting. I always tell council members whenever I can, it just has to be publicly noticed. So if two of you want to talk about some idea that you had during the campaign when you were not subject to the Sunshine Law, just call up Marnie and say, we want to meet, and we'd like to meet, to talk about, Councilmember A and B would like to meet to talk about whatever it is, and Marnie can notice it. It will be a public meeting. It is open to the public, but it is a public meeting, and that allows you to speak directly with each other. So you don't have to wait until the council meetings. You don't have to, so if we're going to meet on November 19th, you don't have to wait again then until December 10th to speak if you'd like, but it needs to be publicly noticed, and that's something that Marnie can take care of. Next slide. Again, I've kind of gone over this already. When does it apply? You have two or more council members or board members that are meeting. Now, this applies to if you're on the same board. So it would apply to you as council members with council members, but it doesn't prohibit you from talking to, say, Carolyn Whiteman, she's the chair of the Parks and Recreation Board. You all are not on the same board as her, so it would not prevent you from talking to her if you wanted to talk to her about some ideas that you or she have about how to, use our parks or improve our parks and open space. So, but it would apply to members of the Parks and Recreation Committee, obviously, from speaking with each other. And again, it doesn't mean that the item has to be pending before you. It just means that it applies if it could foreseeably come before the council for action. So if, we've got a comp plan rewrite that we're going to be going through, that's already been dealt with, it's not coming back for a while because that process is going to take a while, any discussion about that amongst you all would still apply because that will be coming back before you all at some point in the future. Next slide. Again, this is quick. Meetings have to take place in public buildings, and it needs to be the court construes it so as to err on the side of as much access for the public as possible. So they want to avoid a chilling effect like having at your private home, unless you're willing to open your private home for public space, which more power to you if you will. I'm not willing to. Next slide. This has to do with voting. You cannot vote by secret ballot. That doesn't mean we can't do written votes. But if you do written votes, and if you recall, we've done it a couple times over the past year or two, the votes have to be written, you have to put your name on the votes, and those votes become public record, and they are accessible to any member of the public should he or she request it. And I'll get into public records in a little bit too. So your votes have to be public, whether it's done openly right then or in writing. It has to be public at some point. Next slide. Now, this has to do with prior organizations you were involved in. You can still be involved in your social and civic or other organizations you're involved in. You don't need to stop doing that. But if those social organizations come before the board, and one thought I have is we've had in the past charitable giving, and we've had organizations request funds for the village for charitable giving. If you are involved in those, you should not be discussing those issues with the organizations at the time. And in certain instances, and we'll get into voting conflicts, in certain instances you may also need to disclose or avoid voting on them. Next slide. There are some exemptions to the Sunshine Law. Attorney-client sessions are exempt, but they are limited. They are limited to pending litigation, not threatened litigation. It is limited to pending litigation. So if somebody has a lawsuit against the village, we can meet privately. We have to notice it. You open the meeting and you say, we're here on an attorney-client session. These people, the statute restricts who can be there. It has to be the counsel, the lawyer, or lawyers, depending on what it involves, the manager, and then there's a court reporter. And there's a court reporter because the whole transcript is going to be taken and transcribed, and when that case is over, it becomes a public record if anybody wants to see it. Security sessions, if we're talking about security issues, for obvious reasons, that can be done in private, because we don't want the bad guys getting to know our security vulnerabilities that we might be talking about. And another issue that you guys will be dealing with is collective bargaining sessions. Collective bargaining sessions are available when there is actual pending collective bargaining negotiations. The statutory restrictions or requirements aren't quite as strict as they are for the attorney-client litigation sessions, but that is guided by statute as well. Next slide, and this is just so you all know that the Sunshine Law does have some teeth. If you violate the Sunshine Law, now again, you have to knowingly violate the Sunshine Law. If you violate it, it's punishable up to a second-degree misdemeanor with up to 60 days in jail and a $500 fine. If it's a violation without knowledge, it's punishable through a non-criminal infraction with a fine up to $500. Next slide. This is going to be public records. Just what I would recommend, anything that is village business is a public record. Under the current law, it doesn't matter what device it's on. It doesn't matter if it was sent to your private email and somebody emails you and says, I would like you to pass this, this resolution or this ordinance. If it's sent to your private email, but it is about village business, it is still a public record. You all will be getting village emails. What I would recommend is if somebody texts you, somebody emails you, or anything like that, forward it to the clerk, and then it's on the village system. So if we get a public records request, we can search for it in the village system, and we don't have to bother you all and say, do you have it? I mean, we will still check, obviously, to make sure, but if you say, I forward everything to the clerk whenever I get it, then we say, okay, great, we know it's on our system, we don't have to bother you any longer. So I would definitely recommend anytime if you're communicating, and because people inevitably have your private email and they don't realize that this public records requirement's there. If they communicate with you, I would just forward it to Marnie, or you can always, if you reply to them, copy your own village email address, and then that way it's in the village system, and again, we don't have to bother you, and you can just say, if we get a public records request, as a matter of course, I always send it to the village, so I would not have anything that you don't already have. Next slide. I think I went over all of this stuff. The only thing I would say is the Florida courts are the same thing. If there is any doubt about whether the Sunshine or the public records law applies, courts err on the side of it applying. So they will, if there's doubt, they will find that the public records law applies. Next slide. These are just the requirements. Again, the custodian needs to maintain the records. The official village custodian is Marnie, the village clerk. But like I said, if you get them to your private email, we don't have access to that, or if you get it to a text to your private cell phone, that's why I say if you forward it to her, it's taken care of, and it's not something that you have to think about again. Next slide. This is just, again, more about the custodial requirements. Obviously, there's a backup custodian, which is the deputy clerk in Marnie's office as well. Next slide. There are just some points to note that, and this is for the public as well, it's important for them to note that the village can impose some conditions on inspection and copying of records. So if there is a large time commitment that's involved, and there's a large expense, the village can impose conditions and say, we can do that, but there is a copying expense of X amount, or it's going to require, because of the size of the request, it's going to require 2 to 3 hours to go through these 700 pages of documents to see if there's exemptions or confidentiality, because there are a number of statutory exemptions and confidentiality provisions in there. So those are just some things, just so that the council and the public are aware that you can impose some conditions. We can't say, no, you can't get it. We can't say, why do you want it, and we don't like the reason you want it. But we can say, this is going to cost a lot of money, and we need a prepayment of some amount. Next slide. And again, this has to do with timing. I mean, again, it doesn't have to be immediately produced, but we need to do it within a reasonable time. And reasonable time depends on the request. If the request is for one document that's easily accessible and we can get it right away, a 30-day time to respond, unless we're inundated by other public records requests, would probably not be deemed to be reasonable. But in certain circumstances, it could be if we're inundated by a crazy public records request. But other times it might take longer depending on the size of the request. Next slide. This, what I talked to again about before, the administrative costs. General rule is if it's going to be 30 minutes or more of administrative time spent, then the village, you could expect the village to request administrative costs and prepayments of that. Next slide. And this is something I touched on. The requester under Florida law, requester doesn't have to state even who's making the request. It can be done anonymous. We can't require that they sign something, do anything, and they don't have to make it in person, and they don't have to tell us why they want to. I mean, it can be somebody from Indiana and says, I'd like a record of all of your contracts with solid waste handlers for the last 10 years. We don't have to ask them why somebody from Indiana would want that. We're under an obligation to give it to them. Next slide. That's what I was touching on there, the first point. The next point, again, the person can ask to inspect the record. They don't have to just get a copy of it. They can say, I'd like to inspect it, and that's okay. And they're not limited by the number of public records requests that they can make if there's a requester. Next point. Our next slide talks about, again, we can't object if it's overly broad. I mean, I don't want to invite overly broad requests, but if somebody makes them, we have to comply with them. Now, that administrative fee is going to kick in, and it's probably going to be pretty high. But we can ask, as a village, we are allowed to ask somebody to clarify the request. If the request is not clear, or if they send in a request and we know it's going to bring back thousands of documents, we can say, this is going to bring back thousands of documents because there's no time limitation on it. Would you like to limit the time or something like that? So we can seek clarification from the requester. Next slide. I might have this one in twice. Sorry, next slide. So just to sum up public records, we've got a uniform procedure. Everything is handled through Marnie's office. She does a wonderful job of doing it, and we comply with all the requirements of the law. And if Marnie is on a well-deserved vacation, we do have an alternate through the deputy clerk. We acknowledge, next slide, we acknowledge receipt of every public records request, and we record every public records request. Marnie has a system that she goes through for all of the records requests. And then we also ensure that they're not reviewed, or they're not, sorry, not released until they're reviewed for exemption and confidentiality. Because just so you all know, there are certain things that are, should not be produced. I mean, security camera information. There's exemptions for, confidentiality exemptions for addresses of police officers, things like that, bank information. There are a number of things, so all of that is reviewed before it goes out to the requester. And hopefully I don't need to say this, but I will reiterate it. The village is always looking to be helpful when it comes to responding to public records requests. We know what our duty is, and we're trying to be helpful. We're not trying to delay. We're trying to get you whatever it is you might be looking for. Next slide will provide just some of the public records which I talked about. Social security numbers, medical records, student records, personal information. If there's an active criminal investigation, that would be exempt while it's active. Next slide. And then these are there are penalties when it comes to public records. If somebody knowingly, again, it has to be knowingly for criminal. If they knowingly violate the law, they could be subject to suspension or removal, and they could be found to commit a first-degree misdemeanor, which is up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. Non-criminal infraction would be a $500 fine. There are also our availability of the civil suit against the village if we don't comply, and if the requester is successful, the village can be ordered to pay their attorney's fees as well. Next slide, this deals with social media. I just want to make sure you all are aware, social media interactions also are subject to public records and sunshine. You cannot get around that, so I just mentioned it because I want to make sure to be mindful. As I put up there, if used properly, social media has a lot of benefits and can really promote transparency, can really, you can engage the public that way in ways that might be a little more difficult without social media. But just be careful. You be careful with, we've all seen social media. There are sometimes offensive messages. Just avoid liking it, because that could be seen as an endorsement of you in your official capacity as a village elected official. Same thing if you have a private account, and if you're using it for public purposes, it can be deemed a public record. And then I also point, I don't know if anybody of you, I don't even have social media, but I understand that there are people who manage other people's social media networks. So even if you have someone who manages your social media networks, you still have oversight responsibility as an elected official. Next slide. And again, this goes to what I was talking about before in terms of the Sunshine Law. It still applies on social media. You cannot be messaging each other on social media any more than you can be, privately meeting with them to talk about an issue that might come before you all. So just remember, social media, Sunshine Law still applies. Next slide. And this was an example. I took out the name of this is not an example from Islamorada. This is an example of elsewhere. You had John Doe asked his friends on his Facebook page to contact another council member to support a measure. And one of his friends included a council member, and that council member responded and indicated that they supported the initiative. That is a communication between the two council members. So be careful. I know social media is very easy to communicate, and it's wonderful, but just remember, in the arena as a public official, there's some additional obligations that fall upon you. Next slide. Actually, this just goes into what I was talking about before. that your records might constitute a public record depending on how they were utilized, what they deal with. So just keep that in mind. If you have questions about anything, call me, call Marnie. We can advise you on public records issues as well as on sunshine law issues. Next slide. This just, I guess I'm trying to gild the lily a little bit on there. It's just, exercise caution. It's a great platform for you all to use. It's wonderful, but just exercise caution when doing so. And then we'll get into the last few slides here, which are going to be on voting issues. So you will have things that come before you on a number of issues. If you have what's called a special gain or loss, and Florida law looks at that as an economic benefit or harm, so an economic gain or loss that applies either uniquely to you or to a small subclass of which you belong, you have a voting conflict under Florida law, and you will need to recuse yourself from that vote. And generally, as I mentioned at the bottom, if you make up 1% or more of the class, that's what they will look at, that you will have a voting conflict. So if it's you and 3 other people, and there's a special gain or loss that might come of it, that would apply to you. If it's you and 500 other people, or if it's you and 2,000 other residents, it's getting diluted, and the likelihood of the voting conflict applying to you is lessened or nullified. But again, if any of those issues, call me. I can advise, or I have a partner by the name of Robert Myers, who ethics is what he does. He goes around the state. In fact, you all will have to take an ethics seminar. He is the speaker of a lot of those ethics seminars, and you will have access to him. And if I can't answer it, I can either ask him or I can have him, connect him with you. So if you have any questions about any item that might come before you on voting issues, please talk to us first. Like I said, it's always better to talk to us before than after. Next slide. This is what I was talking about before. I've already touched on this as to what a gain or loss means. This is all dealt with in the Florida statutes and interpreted by the Commission on Ethics and in case law. So this is just reiterating what I just told you. Next slide. Some things to consider is when you're looking at voting conflicts, look at the type of action it is. There's quasi-judicial action, which is going to be generally a zoning action. Though that's going to be, you are going to be bound by the record that's before you. There are standards of review for that. And then there's purely legislative decisions, which do we want to enter into this contract or not, yes or no. So those are things that we can talk about in terms of if you ever get to that point. Scope of impact, that deals again with whether you fall within that class or not, and the measure of economic benefit or loss. Is it tangible and is it measurable? That's one thing that's required. It has to be a tangible economic benefit of loss, and it has to be measurable. Otherwise, you don't fall within that. If it's just some potential future harm that you can't put any value on, at least under the law as it currently stands, that's not something that would apply. But again, call us. We are happy to talk you through it. I mean, sometimes it's just a quick 2-minute phone call. I can answer your question really quick and you can move on and it's not an issue. Other times, depending on how intricate it is, it might be a little bit more entailed. Next slide. This is just the process for what happens if you have a voting conflict. Prior to the vote, you have to state the nature of your conflict, you abstain from voting, and then you complete a Form 8B, and you will file that with Marnie, with the village clerk. The form you have to state your conflict and abstain, obviously, before the vote. The form has to be filed within 15 days of the vote. I would encourage you to do it before, no reason to wait, but you do have a buffer, especially if sometimes you're not thinking about it necessarily, but then when you sit down on the dais, you realize, and you're focused on it, and you realize that you have a conflict, so you can file that form within 15 days. If you're absent from the meeting, or if you're absent from that portion of the meeting, you don't have to file. because obviously you're not there for the vote. So you don't have a voting conflict if you're not present. So if you sit out of the item, you can participate in the discussion, but you still have a voting conflict, and you still have to file the form, even if you don't. So there is again, we can deal with those as they come up, if they come up. You don't have a legal duty to abstain due to an appearance of conflict or an appearance of bias. You can, though, if you say, you know what, this is a longtime friend of mine, and it just doesn't look right. Just let us know, and you can abstain from voting. You're not required to, whereas if you have a special economic benefit or loss, you are required to abstain. If there's an appearance, you're not required to, but you can. The law does allow you to do that. Next slide. That's what I just said. And two more, which just deals with gifts. So the next slide. You, as elected officials now, are not allowed to, with some exceptions, which I'll deal with on the next slide. Go back, sorry. You're not allowed to solicit or accept anything if it's taken with the understanding that it will influence you. You also have a threshold for reporting gifts, which is $100. So if you receive a gift and somebody gives you a bottle of champagne that is more than $100, you need to report that through the gift reporting requirements. It also applies to if you have a gift, multiple gifts within the same quarter, and that by quarter I mean calendar year. Within the same quarter that total more than $100, you would need to report that if it's from the same donor. I would say what I put on there, valuation and calculation is not always as easy as it sounds. The village does have an attorney on retainer by the name of Mark Herron that the village retained before in terms of for filing your disclosures, your ethical disclosures. These are things that will be at your disposal as well if you need assistance with calculating and how to disclose a gift. Again, you can talk to us. That's something that we can help with, but there is a specific attorney that the council retained for individual items because they're not really council-related items for the village attorney, although we can give guidance, but they're specific ethical items, but there is obviously a benefit to the village that's derived from you complying. Next slide is just to go over some exceptions. Political contributions, 4 of you just went through a campaign. Congratulations to the Vice Mayor for not having to go through a campaign. Political contributions, if you're going through a campaign, those don't count. Family members, if they're in your household, they give you a birthday present, does not apply. A private employer gives you a holiday gift, that doesn't apply. If you get awards, for professional awards won't apply, books, things like that. Gifts solicited in your official duties but used for a municipal public purpose, say the Coral Shores girls soccer team wins the state championship and they come and they present the mayor with a framed soccer jersey that's signed by the whole team, and it's to be hung in Village Hall in recognition of this great achievement. That would not be a gift that would have you. That's being given to the village, but obviously it's being given to, in that example, is being given to the mayor. You're still able to get publicly advertised offers that are available to the general public because that's not related to your employment as an elected official. And then if you go to any educational events, there are seminars and things like that around the state. Those would not be, the costs associated with attending would not be considered gifts as long as there's a governmental purpose behind it. If it's going to the casino and learning how the slot machine works because you guys, that's something that you want to do, chances are that's not going to be considered a governmental purpose here in Islamorada. But if you go to a resiliency seminar or environmental seminar, that would likely be considered governmental purpose. So hopefully I spoke quickly enough and I didn't take up too much of your time, but there are things that I wanted to touch on because it's important that you know before, because after, if there's an issue afterwards, it's a lot harder to unwind than it is for us to deal with right up front. So I'm happy to answer any questions. If there's any specific legal questions that you have, I would say let's have those discussions individually so that they're not had in the public sphere. But you have my cell phone. It's in the binder that I included. Feel free to reach me. I'm always available on my cell phone, and am happy to chat about any of the issues that might come up. So if you have any questions for today, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Marnie. Thank you.
Okay, that was a great overview of our legal responsibilities from Mr. Quick. Some of the things that he touched on, though, I will add to. So I am the ethics coordinator for the village. I will be contacting you with opportunities to take your annual mandatory 4-hour ethics training. A lot of those opportunities come through the Florida League of Cities. We do also have the Florida Institute of Government has an online course that's interactive. So that's also available, but I'll be reaching out to you about those opportunities. And also I'll be in touch about your annual financial disclosure, which is required with the Florida Commission of Ethics due July 1st of every year. As John mentioned, I am the Public Records Coordinator, and just to reiterate what he said, best to send any village business to me. So, I would just suggest if anything comes to your village email address or your village issued cell phone, we have access to those, but anything coming to a personal, we don't. So you'll want to make sure that we have that because it does become a public record, and if there is a public records request that requests those materials, it's a lot easier for you to handle that if they're all coming to the same place. So that's strongly recommended. I am blind copied on all emails coming to council members' village email addresses. The reason for that is a longstanding practice to ensure transparency and gives us an opportunity to get on top of anything that might be relevant information for the village manager to know. So, I'm not there to spy on your emails. I generally don't even look at them. If I see that there's something that, isn't any of my business, it's none of my business, and I don't care. But, if anything does affect the village, it's important that the village manager is brought in. So that is just a heads up that that's what's happening. I use just FOIA as our software to do our public records requests. It's a good program because what I like about it is that we can set all of the the documents that we are putting out to be part of a public archive. So you can go on to Just FOIA, onto our Just FOIA page, and if you look, there's 400 and some odd requests that you can just look through the materials that have already been provided to other folks. So it's a good place to go to start searching for something, especially if it's something that might be a common request. So that stuff's already out there, and that's what I love about it. Like John mentioned, public records requests do not have to, they can be completely anonymous. Somebody can call me and just say, I want to put in a public records request for this. And if they don't want to give me any contact information, that's great. I'll put it right into Just FOIA, and I'll say, here is your request number, here is your security key. You can contact us if you want, but you can go in and just enter that information and check yourself, and then the material will be there. So we do enter all of the verbal and emailed requests into Just FOIA to make sure that, like I say, everything's in one place. I am also responsible for council agenda management. So all of the department heads will be making their own council items, you know, doing their own resolutions and all that, and they're putting their documentation in. But I kind of coordinate it, make sure it's formatted all nice and pretty, make sure it gets published. One thing that is important to know is that by the time it becomes public, items have gone through several layers of workflow. So the finance director has seen them, the city attorney or village attorney has seen them, the village manager has seen them. So along that opportunity, everyone can, you know, make changes or request changes, and nothing gets finalized until we're satisfied that it's ready to go out to the council and to the public. One of the other things that we have with our new handy-dandy civic clerk agenda management software is that there is a nice board portal. Councilmember Jolin had used it during this last council session, and it's a really nice way to not have to have the big book that's available to you. Training is available. IT will be in touch with to get you your cell phone and your email address. Most likely they'll be looking at providing you with a laptop or a tablet to use for Civic Clerk for the board portal if that's what you would like to do. We want to make sure that everyone has whatever they need to officially do their duties. We don't, you know, we want to make it easy. Technology and training is available. One of the other things, as you all know, I am the elections qualifying officer. So I do work very closely with the supervisor of elections. I'm also the election coordinator. So although we do not administer elections at the local level here in Florida, I spent 15 years in Michigan doing just exactly that. So I was super excited on Tuesday not to have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and be to work by 5:30 to stay there until the cows come home, which is, you know, it's a lot of work. And, you know, so I give it to Joyce Griffin. She is amazing. She's done such an amazing job over the last 40 years. It's going to be a lot different with her gone just because she's so entrenched in the position. I am looking forward to working with Supervisor Hodes. I have met her several times and, you know, feel confident that we're going to be going into a good relationship with her as well. The Supervisor of Elections actually does not have to administer our elections. So I have no reason to expect that relationship to change, but if it does, as I said, I spent 15 years doing it, and it's not going to be a problem. So, let's see what we got here. I'm also your travel coordinator. So what that means is, you know, if you are going to be traveling on village business, I'm going to be making those arrangements for you. So the Florida League of Cities hosts a number of events throughout the year, conferences and workshops and such. And when those opportunities come through, you'll get them in your village email address, but you'll be getting them from me too to kind of follow up. And when you do decide that you want to travel on behalf of the village for those opportunities, I would be the one who would be making and paying for the registration, making your hotel arrangements. You know, if it's like Florida Keys Day, which is held up in Tallahassee, I'm the one who's booking the flights for you. So those are all great opportunities. Florida Keys Day has not yet been solidified with a date. It's usually in January because it does have to take place before the state legislature starts their session, which I do believe is in March. So be on the lookout for that opportunity coming soon. I also do a number of administrative duties in support of the Village Council. So I do attend all the meetings, as you all know, transcribe the minutes. I also process resolutions and agreements and ordinances, create the public notices, attest to official documents along with the mayor and the village attorney, and I provide any other administrative support as needed to the council. So primarily when you are contacting the village, you're going through Rob, and that is the flow of command, but there are administrative things that I can help you with that you don't need to trouble him with. So, you know, feel free to contact me directly, and if it's something that I think Rob needs to know about, I will make sure that he does. I also provide notary services, so if anybody needs a notary, I'm the place to come. The last thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was committee oversight. So we do have our our citizens advisory committees. We do have 7 committees, and they are governed under Ordinance 2305, which has added a council liaison to each committee. So we have 7 committees, and each one now requires a council liaison. So that's a conversation that we're going to probably have the council talking about sooner rather than later, so that help get up to speed. It's not required or even recommended for the liaisons to attend the meetings of these committees, just so that they feel like they can speak freely and that they don't have feeling like there's a council member sitting there. So, you can, but it's not required. And, like I say, we don't necessarily recommend it, but that will all come later. And once those council liaison appointments are made, we connect you with the staff liaison who will bring you up to speed. And I think that's most of what I had. I wanted to go over a little bit of the stuff that I have in the binder for you, so, we love binders. So we have the proposed meeting dates for 2025 in there. As a council, if you decide to change those, of course, we'll change them, but you're going to be seeing these in December to come up to be officially, officially adopted for the year's meeting schedule. And that does not mean that dates can't still change. If something comes up over the course of the year and you need to request a meeting to be held on a different date, we work through that process together, and I can take care of that for you. I've also got in your binders some of the things that John did talk about. I've got the Florida Sunshine Amendment law and ethics law in the binders as well, so you're kind of getting a double on that one. But there's also under tab 7, it says resources in your table of contents, and what that primarily is memos and lists of duties that some of us directors have put in there. When we put together this presentation, we asked everybody for 5 bullet points, but if they wanted to provide more information, and some of us did, most of what I'm talking about right now is in there. Rob, John, AJ has put something in there, Fire's got some stuff in there. And those are just extra resources. Also in that section, just before the little blue tab, is the police report that Lieutenant Sprinkle was talking about. So, if you look at that and find that to be of value to you, that one, the example that she has is from Marathon, but we can absolutely do that for you. We want to do everything we possibly can to make your job easier, because it's a lot. You're going to be overwhelmed at times, and our job is to help you through that process. One of the things that can help you through that process, as I believe it was John mentioned, is the council briefings. So prior to every council meeting, like you said, you'll get together with the manager, the village attorney, any department heads who might be involved in that agenda that can help answer more questions, so that when you get to the meeting, it's more of a, it's an easier process to go through when you already are aware of what everything is and what the impact is. One last thing I wanted to explain was the canvas process. So although it's pretty clear who our council members are, the actual canvas takes place 10 days after the election, which is required by state law to allow for any military overseas ballots to come in and still be counted. So there may be a slight change in the actual numbers by the time the official results come in, but I received those in the late afternoon of Friday, November 15th. So the state law is that the county canvas is the official canvas. However, we have a requirement in our charter to have our canvassing board meet. So our canvassing board will be meeting on Monday morning at 8:30. And what we will basically be doing is acknowledging the receipt of the official totals. The charter also requires that the members of the committee be council members who are not running for re-election. So council members Greg Rosenthal and Jolyn will be working with me at that canvas. So, pardon? The outgoing council members. So Henry, Elizabeth, and Mark. Yeah, yeah. So there needs to be at least 3 people. The clerk is the chair. Rob will be attending as well. He's not required to, but, you know, getting gang back together. And so then once that's done, it's official. So you will be officially council members as of Friday, November 15th. We go through all of the formalities, and then Judge Sharon Hamilton will be swearing you all in at the November 19th meeting, and you'll also be selecting your mayor and vice mayor at that time. And that's all I have, and I'll turn it over to Rob unless anyone's got any questions for me. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Now, you've been congratulated several times for your having won election and re-election, but I wanted to, on behalf of all of our staff, congratulate you for your election and your re-election, and to thank you for your service to the Islamorada community. Being an elected official in any community is a very tough job. Some of you have firsthand experience in that. Some of you are coming into it for the first time. It's a very challenging position. Some of the decisions you'll make will be very easy, mom and apple pie. Other ones will be a lot more difficult for you to make. So I really have a great sense of appreciation for people who come to public service and want to acknowledge on behalf of our staff, both our new officials and our existing ones. So that having been said, I'll work through my presentation kind of rapidly here. It's been a long night. I know you guys have been very patient, and a lot of information's been thrown at you. One of the key things that I do as a village manager is to implement village council policies. John spoke to it earlier. It's a critical component of professional city management. I run the day-to-day operations of the village and really work hard with our expert staff to diligently implement policies that a quorum of the board decide that they want to achieve within a certain timeline. So you'll see that our staff will row in the right direction, and they'll work very hard, and we'll be, again, implementing the village council policies as we have capability and resources to do so. As part of that, we provide complete and objective analysis. In order to help you make important decisions, you need good information. So what we try to do as staff is to assemble that information, make it as clear and concise as we possibly can, and provide professional recommendations. You're fortunate to have in your charter officers a couple of people who are very, very experienced. We have depth and breadth of experience both on the legal side and on the professional city management side. Because we try to make well-supported recommendations does not mean you're bound to accept them. Our responsibility is to provide you with the information that we think you need and that will help you reach the determinations that you're going to be asked to make on a routine basis. After we've done that and provided our recommendation, if you have different viewpoints or perspectives as a group on council, it's our position and our responsibility to implement whatever those decisions are. Another thing I do is prepare a budget for council consideration. You heard some of our staff talk about their departmental budgets. We're going to be looking at our budget process continuously to improve it. We want to make sure that we provide sufficient time for council to ask all the questions that they need to ask, that we have our department heads preparing and advancing well-defended budget proposals, and that we have a budget document ultimately that reflects industry best practices. So one of our objectives really would be to have a GFOA, it's the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So that may not come for the next budget, but if not, the one thereafter. And while it is an accolade and a recognition, it really is much more than that, because there is a very intense rubric of professional standards that have to be met in order to be able to achieve that level of recognition. So you'll see over time that we're working with you, us heading in the direction of making sure that we have a sufficient level of public transparency and a very sound budget process that not only helps you make decisions and helps the community to advance goals that they're interested in advancing, but also, again, adheres to industry best practices. Another thing I do is faithfully discharge charter roles and responsibilities. There's a number of roles and responsibilities I have under the charter. Primarily, most of them that are listed there are operational, organizational oversight, staff hiring, firing, and evaluation, all of those types of things. And importantly, I maintain political neutrality. One of the things that we want to be sure to do is, with all of the viewpoints and perspectives that sometimes you end up with on a village council, is I want to make sure that everyone has the same information. I don't want to be in a position organizationally to where certain individuals hold the cards and are able to make better informed decisions than their peers on the council. Everyone should have the same information that the others have, so that we can discuss that openly and transparently and empower everyone to be an effective participant in whatever conversations we're having. That's one of the reasons why you'll hear staff say, well, you know, if you have requests or needs, channel them through the manager so I can get them back out to staff, bring the response back from staff and send it out to council, because when I do that, I make sure that every member of council receives that same information that was requested by one or two council members, so that they're aware of that landscape and can include in their discussion and their evaluation of particular topics the full breadth of information that each of the other council members has. It's a very critically important task. And as part of political neutrality, not only do I adhere to the state requirements for ethics, but I also firmly adhere to the International City County Management Association's Code of Ethics. We have a great deal of emphasis on that in the professional city management industry, as they do in the legal sector. And you'll see that your public servants here at the village strongly embrace all ethical standards that apply to our roles and responsibilities as public servants. So with that having been said, I will mention one last thing. I do offer to all of our council members the opportunity to have one-on-ones. If you're interested in one-on-one meetings, call me anytime. We can put a set one on calendar, or we can come in and discuss anything that you would like to discuss. There's really no limit to it, and I'll be providing my best solution to each of those issues that you might bring to our attention. So if you're interested in that, we can put something on Outlook on a recurring meeting, or again, ad hoc basis. Give me a call. I'll make sure that I'm available. So any questions? No? Okay, very well. With that, I think we're all done for the evening then, folks. Really appreciate you taking time from your schedules. You know, you have family at home, I'm sure, but we're looking really forward to working with each of you.